time to come into the class today. You know, there's several other classes going on, so you've allocated your time here, and we appreciate that. And our objective here is that you'll be, when you walk out of here, you'll have a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more understanding, and more direction in your own life of what is farming and what agriculture is all about. It's I get the opportunity to introduce somebody to you that has absolutely been a blessing in my life. Interesting enough, he hired me to coach him, and I'm the one learning. He really is a man of a huge heart and a massive amount of knowledge. Every time I've been in the room with him, I can't leave without learning something. And as far as this earth is concerned, and being able to regenerate the properties of this earth so that we can have more health, more nutrition, and longer lifespans, he's the guy you're going to want to talk to. So, did anybody else come here to learn something? Okay, just making sure I wasn't the only one. Okay. I would ask you guys just to kind of open up your minds and your hearts to Jared Sorensen. He runs a 20,000-acre ranch and grass-fed, grass-finished cattle. And his land, I've seen some of the pictures of his land, how far it's moved in the right direction. He knows what he's talking about. And so if you guys have questions, we want this to be an interactive class. He's going to be sharing his slides and his knowledge with you. So if you have questions, concerns, funny jokes, or comments, don't keep them to yourself. Raise your hand and you know, interact with the class. If you don't know, it might be the words you're asking, the question you're asking, if somebody else needs to take away today. And some of the most powerful words in our existence are the ones you're going to be saying to yourself. The words you speak to yourself. So raise your hand, dare to raise that your hand, and bring yourself out of the comfort zone and participate in this class. You guys all in? Okay, cool. Without further ado, I'm going to bring Jared Sorensen up to the front of the room.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Can you give Jonathan a big round of applause? He's a personal mentor of mine. He trains and coaches large audiences. I mean, like thousands of people. And so for him to be here and give some time today, it is just really, really appreciated. We're going to talk about regeneration. How many of you care about the food you eat and where your food comes from? And maybe you're in the right place. How many of you believe that it is within you to be able to heal the earth? Like that you have the power to heal the earth? Okay, all right. Thank you. Well, you're in the right place because those are the two main topics that we're going to be talking about today. My name is Jared Sorensen. I'm a third-generation rancher. This is part of our ranch in northeastern Nevada. Everybody wants to say Nevada and they think of Las Vegas and desert and cactus, and there are beautiful parts in Nevada. There's really beautiful, beautiful parts. We live in Ruby Valley, which is about 4.5 hours north and a little bit west of here. Pretty similar climate to what we've got around here. My roots actually tie back to southern Utah. My father, my grandfather, I'm going to maybe move this front row a little bit so I can have a little more interaction. Grew up, please come on in. And there's a paper on the back for those of you who are coming in. I didn't tell you this, but this is there's a quiz. And if you want to eat lunch, there has to be 80% on the quiz. So just kidding, just kidding. Everybody should get 100% on this quiz because it's very much open book and you can ask the question. All right, so back to my roots. Southern Nevada, my dad was born in a town close by here. We call it Hurricane, but you guys call it something else. I don't know. Hurricane. Yeah, that, Hurricane. So yeah, I've got roots down here. My name is Sorensen. I guess there's quite a few of those around here. We're probably related. But welcome to this class. In this class, we're going to learn how to be able to take steps to truly regenerate the earth. You're going to gain skills and confidence to step into whatever your stewardship is. And people ask us how many acres we manage. Acres and size doesn't really matter. Whether it's a square foot or a square mile, these principles apply. You'll have a sense of hope, because in farming, has there been a lot of hope in the last couple years? There's been maybe a little bit of doom and gloom. Come on in, folks. There's some seats up here. Grab the quiz on the back table. So yeah, hope is kind of a rare commodity. And in agriculture, interestingly enough, but farmers and ranchers are very highly productive. They're not very profitable. And in the last few years, where have profits been for farmers and ranchers? If break even is at this line on a typical farm and ranch, it's been kind of down here. And so there's some doom and gloom. Yeah, we're going to talk about, we're not going to be doom and gloom and doomsdayers, but we have to confront what the problems actually are. Let me wake up my computer here again. Hopefully it'll jump online there again. So I appreciate you coming. In this class, I invite you to be able to be interactive, to take notes. The answers to the quiz are going to be throughout what we're speaking about here. If there's anything that doesn't make sense to you, please ask. Please ask. The only dumb answer is the answer that isn't asked. So my family, I've got 9 children. This is all of us in this picture last summer at a camping trip behind our house in the mountains. Family's really important to me. It's like, you know, of all the things that we do on the ranch, if we can't do it with the family, then it probably wouldn't be worth doing for me. And I don't know, does anybody else feel that way too? Is that a big part of why we're in agriculture? By raise of hands, is family a driving factor? It's okay if it's not. Maybe it's something selfish, maybe it's, and it's not selfish, but self-fulfilling. That's okay. For me, it's largely family. So this is my wife, Selena. We've been married for 20 some odd years, 3?
Long time.
Long time, yeah, thank you. And we work together. So everybody wants to know, what kind of farming do you do? We raise cattle. A large part of our operation is a custom grazing, whereby we bring in cattle for a season, generally during the summer months, and then they get shipped out to their owners for the winter. We direct market grass-fed beef. And we're going to talk about regeneration. Regeneration and resiliency. What is that? First of all, let's talk about what resilient means. When a system is resilient and it faces stress, how does the system respond? Comes back, it bounces back in a healthy way. So those would all be, you know, synonymous with resilient. Well, as I went along in my career, like from the time when I was about 12 years old, I felt the calling that I wanted to be involved in agriculture. And so, fortunately, I was able to inherit a place. The youngest of 10 siblings, and what's the likelihood of me being the one that wants to come back to the ranch? But in my case, that's how it worked. And we started to confront some challenges and some problems in our farming or ranching operation. And with those challenges, my answer was to work harder, because that's what I knew how to do. You grow up on a ranch, you face a challenge, you get up earlier, you work harder, you break through the challenge. Sometimes that works, but most often, if your paradigm, if your thought process is faulty, what's the result of working harder? Or tired, frustration. Yeah, and so I started to get frustrated because the solution that I found to breaking through the problems wasn't working. And I found this quote, and you're probably all familiar with it, by Albert Einstein. Does somebody want to stand up and read it with a loud voice? This is where you have to be a little bit brave. Thank you.
The significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were
that when he created them, Albert Einstein.
Okay, very good. So what does that mean to you? So if we have in agriculture, do we have any significant problems that we're facing right now? Yeah, a few of them, huh? Every day, maybe? Every time you wake up? Yeah, it's kind of like some days you wake up and it's like, what's going to die today, right? That's part of agriculture, life and death. Hopefully it's not you, and hopefully it's not your animals that you care about, but there are some significant challenges. One of the challenges, like, I really, really appreciated the keynote speaker this morning. I'm an aspiring author, and to be able to hear her read and the way that it brought people to tears listening to what she wrote. I mean, was anybody else moved by that?
Yep.
Yeah. It was pretty awesome, her ability to be able to articulate words. But she said in there, the quote by Wendell Berry, that when we separated animals and plant production, we took one solution and created two problems. Well, I would add to that, we created a lot more than two problems. We created a myriad of problems that we're dealing with right now. And so in production, agriculture, typical agriculture, I'm a cow-calf rancher, and he's a corn farmer, and he's an alfalfa farmer, and I raise soybeans, and he raises wheat. So we're like, don't dare let your cows get on my wheat fields. You know, that's just can't happen. And so we're very compartmentalized. And why do we do that? In the name of efficiency, right? It's way more efficient if I just focus on one species and I grow that. It works. And that leads to the point where, yeah, in agriculture we're very, very productive, but we're not very sustainable. We're not very resilient. And so some of the problems that we face in agriculture, I'll just go through them. You guys feeling depressed yet? All right. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Subsidies are a problem. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a section in the book that I'm writing. It's a fictional story, but it talks about subsidies. Why I see it as a problem. Not sustainable. So all of these things are the problems, and we're not here to focus on the problem, but if we're going to find a solution, we have to clearly identify what the problem is. With all of these things, some of you, maybe they hit closer to home than others, but I want you to just imagine, each of us comes here with challenges. Each of us comes with our own problems, if you will, with our own things that are blocking us from getting to where we want to be. So I invite you here for a minute, if you'll indulge me with me in this. We're going to close our eyes. When I say go, you'll close your eyes. Don't fall asleep, just close your eyes. And I want you to envision this challenge that you have in front of you. Okay, so ready, go. Close your eyes, envision what this challenge looks like. Maybe it's a wall that you're facing. You can't see past it. Maybe it's an illness. But let's just transmute whatever that challenge is to a wall that is right before us. And that wall is blocking our progression. It's allowing us not to be able to see past it. It's allowing us not to be able to move forward. It's a wall. It's blocking us. This is our challenge. And keep your eyes closed. You're going to tap into your power of visualization here. And now I want to see you standing in front of that wall, facing it. Maybe it's scary. Maybe you don't feel confident. Right? If we knew how to get over it or past it, it wouldn't be a challenge. But for us, it is a huge challenge. It's blocking us. Now I want you to envision this image of yourself growing in relationship to the wall. And as you grow, your perception of that wall begins to change. Pretty soon you're able to peek over the top and you're able to see, oh, there's light on the other side. And as you keep growing yourself and your capacity and your own resilience, you're able to see, well, now it's just at knee level. I can get over this. And you keep growing that capacity, and pretty soon it's just a step. Okay, you can open your eyes. Those challenges that we face, one of the themes that I've heard from this conference is that whatever the challenge is, brings out the best in us. Did you guys hear that yesterday? That many times the things that were the most trying for these, our fellow producers, are the very things that brought out the greatest opportunities in the businesses. So here today, whether it's any one of these challenges or anything else that you might face, there's an opportunity, right? So can you just like tap the person on the shoulder next to you and say, hey, it's just an opportunity. Go ahead, do that. Wake him up, tell him it's not a challenge. It's just an opportunity. It's just an opportunity. How awesome is that? It all depends on our perception, and I've been against that wall, so flat up against that wall through financial stress, through physical ailments that you can't see. Like this part, this mental health part. I had a son that got sent home from his mission this last year. That's a trying time. When we think we have it all figured out and we're gonna, you know, we know what it is to combat depression, and we're gonna feed this kid right, and then he goes out into the world and we get a phone call that says, hey, he's gotta come home. Yeah, it's hard. But with that comes opportunities. He's okay. He's fulfilling his purpose. Well, my significant challenges, and we get out at about, so we were about 10 minutes late starting. They're not going to run out of food, and they're probably not going to serve food until, you know, everything is running about 10 minutes late. So just so we're on track, we'll get out at about 20 till. And Jonathan's going to give me maybe a 15-minute warning, Jonathan?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, and then again a 5-minute warning. So on my journey, I looked at what the challenges were that we were facing, and I realized that one of them was soil health, and that the soil health not only affects the soil and our ability to grow things, but it also has some unintended consequences. And I was blessed to be able to, sorry to stand in your way, I was blessed to be able to meet this young lady here from New Zealand, and her name is Nicole Masters, and she just came out with a book. It's an awesome book. It's available on Audible. I really encourage you to read it if you're a soil nerd of any kind. Nicole Masters. And I started to look at not only what was growing above ground, because I'm a grass farmer and I got the whole harvesting solar energy thing, but I disregarded my army that was beneath the ground, all these microbes and earthworms and microarthropods and all these things that I didn't even know what existed. And holy cow, I had been inadvertently harming my coworkers. Does that, yeah. Do you like my spelling? Anybody pick up on my? The soil-lution. I created a new word here. It is within us, and it is beneath us, and it's all tied together. Soil actually is soul. And as we study any system, we learn more about other systems and how we're all connected. And the real problem, the real challenge that we're facing in our environment is soil degradation. Like how brave is it to come and stand in front of a bunch of agriculturalists and say, I'm going to talk about climate change? Whew. Man, there's like, normally I think you guys would probably shoot me and drag me out. But maybe this group is a little more diverse-minded, and that climate change, whether it's man-made, whether it's just a cycle, it doesn't matter. We have the solution. So we're going to get a little bit nerdy here, okay? This is where you crack open your quizzes and you see, does anybody not have a quiz? Can we get, can you get one of you gentlemen, or Jonathan's in the back, bring a few of them up here. So the purpose of this quiz is to help you to learn. We need a couple up here too. Right, I was just joking, you're not going to not get lunch if you don't pass the quiz. And there's some pins in that brown bag, John. Okay, so we're gonna see if this works here. Right? Everybody likes the movie. We're gonna watch a 3-minute movie. Invite you to engage in this, and you're gonna.
Do you feel hopeless about climate change and the damage we are doing to our planet? I did. But then I was shown a new way to look at the problem, which made the solution so obvious and so within reach. A solution that's right under our feet. Climate change is all about too much carbon in our atmosphere. But carbon's not our enemy. It's the building block of life. Everything alive is made of it. It's us. The problem and the solution are simply a matter of balance. Let's step back and look at the 5 pools of where carbon is stored on planet Earth. Starting about 500 million years ago, when plants appeared on land, carbon began to cycle in an amazing balance, a balance that allowed for life as we know it to evolve. Then one life form, us, figured out how to extract carbon from the fossil pool. Then we burned it for energy, putting it into play, disrupting that balance. The way we manage land and do agriculture is moving even more carbon from the soil and biosphere into the atmosphere. Specifically, we've moved 880 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is heating up the planet and destabilizing our climate. Now, the oceans have absorbed a lot of this excess carbon, which is resulting in ocean acidification and accelerating a mass extinction of sea life. So in order to save life as we know it, of course, we have to stop releasing fossil carbon. The big question is, where do we put this excess carbon to get this cycle back into balance? Well, remember when I said that the solution is right under our feet? It literally is. It's the soil. Plants, with sunlight and water, perform photosynthesis. They pull in carbon from the air and turn it into carbohydrates, sugars. Then they pump some of those sugars down through their roots to feed microorganisms who use that carbon to build soil. Voila, carbon moved. Plants pump it in and soil stores it. Nature's living technology is amazing. Scientists have recently discovered that applying a thin layer of compost sets up an ongoing positive feedback loop that brings more and more carbon into the soil each year. In concert with other regenerative practices like not tilling the soil, planting trees, cover crops, and planned grazing, we can build and retain gigatons of soil carbon. This is carbon farming. This is regenerative agriculture. And there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. Unlike more carbon in the atmosphere, more carbon in the ground is good for us. It makes healthy soil, which is nutrient-rich, full of life, and holds way more water. This means more nutritious food and crops that are more resilient in the face of drought. That's good news for farmers, families, and everyone that eats. Remember this, the way we grow our food, fiber, and fuel either puts carbon up into the atmosphere or it pulls it down into the ground. The regeneration of soil is the task of our generation. Our health, the health of our soils, and the health of our planet are one and the same.
Can we get a big round of applause for That was put together by my friends at Kiss the Ground. This is an awesome book, and I encourage you to read it. It's available on audio, on Audible, on Amazon. All right, so we learned some things from that movie. We're gonna talk, this is where we get a little bit nerdy here. This is where you might have to poke your neighbor to make sure they stay awake. Because we're gonna talk about what soil actually is. So in a balanced soil, soil is actually living, right? It's different than dirt. Dirt is lifeless, dirt is dirty. Dirty we don't want in our house. Soil is life. In a healthy teaspoon of soil, there's more living organisms than there are people living on the planet. That's a bunch, right? And a healthy teaspoon. If it's not healthy, it's just dead, and it's just dirt. We don't like it. So this is what healthy soil looks like. You've got about 25% air, 25% water, 45% components, sand, silt, and clay. And that little teeny tiny bit, which is the leavening that causes the whole loaf to rise, is what?
Organic matter.
Soil organic matter. Has anybody heard of that before, soil organic matter? Super important. If you haven't heard of it, you're going to learn about it today. All right, so sand, silt, and clay, those are basically, if you think about them, those are the components of soil. And you can think that sand, well, let's go with clay are like BBs. Silt is like golf balls. Sand is like basketballs. They're different in size. That's all basically you need to know about that in this class. But we're going to talk about that one little bit of component. What's the difference between the soil on the right, which is dirt, and the soil on the left, which is soil. Okay, so there's a question on there. Which is the most important component in soil? While you're pondering on that question, let's take in 3 deep breaths, and then I'm going to read you a paragraph while you hold your breath. Got it? Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1 breath in. Exhale. Think about everything. Letting go. 1 more time in. Exhale. 1 more time in. Now hold it, and I'm going to read this paragraph. Pay attention here. Let's see, which one was it? Okay. If Moses had foreseen, you can exhale, but don't inhale. If Moses had foreseen what suicidal agriculture would do to the land of the Holy Earth, might he not have been inspired to deliver another commandment to establish man's relation to the earth and to complete man's trinity of responsibility to his creator? How you guys doing? You guys okay? Okay. Okay, you can take a breath. What's my point? What's the most important component in soil? Air. Did everybody get that? Do we want to do it again? It's what? It's air. Absolutely. We can't live without air. Soil microorganisms can't live without air. Plants can't live. The roots can't live without air. But why? If you look at the picture on the okay, so what happens? All of the air is displaced. What do we know? What term do we have for that in agriculture?
Compacted.
Compaction, right? Compaction. So I'm going to invite you to aerate your brains here a little bit and get rid of some compaction so that you have some air so you can learn some new things. Okay, so that's unhealthy soil. Everybody got it? Unhealthy soil on the right. We need to do it again. Okay, sorry.
So
It'd be on
healthy's on our right.
You're right, because you're right.
Yeah. Okay, healthy soil, on the other hand, is balance. What's the word? Balance. So, sorry, I didn't lead that for it. So the word is balance. What's the word? Balance. It's balanced. And that's with anything that we have in a natural system, it has to be balanced. Oh.
Your computer went to sleep.
Sorry, guys.
Not enough air.
Don't take a cue. It might need some air. Okay, so we need balance in our soil health. We need balance in our own lives.
There we go.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that really important, that leaven in the lump, and that is this 5%. And so this 5% is represented by this now. So we're talking of the 100%, we're taking 5%, and we're looking at what that 5% is made of. You all with me here?
Yep.
So remember 3 things about organic matter. There's living, dead, and really dead. You got it? Simple, right? What are they again? First is living, dead, and really dead. Okay, that's all there is. So we've got we've got living roots and organisms. That's plant roots. That's microorganisms in the soil. You've got those things that have died. You've got those things that have died and are now decomposing. Yeah. And then you've got the really dead over here, which is more stable carbon. Okay, so which system sequesters the most carbon? on our quiz, looking at our quiz, we've got the atmosphere, biosphere, or pedosphere. Which one sequesters the most carbon? Or oceans? It is. Anybody want to guess? Pedosphere. So the oceans isn't actually on there, I guess. So of the three that are on here, so I don't know that. That's a good question.
Just
See,
on the video, he said that the oceans.
yeah. So I was misleading in the question. You might be right if you put oceans. But of the terrestrial systems, I should have quantified that question. Of the terrestrial systems, which ones? So, yes, I actually do not know if oceans or pedosphere sequester more. What we know is that oceans are exceeding their limit and they're becoming acidified. And everybody know what the pedosphere is? It's basically what is beneath us. And it's the soil, it's the living part of the soil which is beneath us, which we all depend on. We depend on the oceans also. So,
Which one's the answer?
I'll give you credit for either one, oceans or pedosphere, but I'm gonna go with pedosphere because that's what they were up there. Modern agriculture, look, in the last 40 years, we've lost 1/3 of our farmable land to this wonderful word, which is? Yeah, it's not what you're gonna have after dinner, dessert. It's desert, what we are experiencing when land becomes no longer living and it actually becomes dead, that turns it into a desert. And is that a problem? That agriculture practices over the last, basically industrialization, this last century has led to 4 tons of topsoil loss. That can be lost through wind. It can be lost through erosion. I took this picture, I was driving down the interstate in southeast Idaho. I won't tell you who it is, it might be your neighbor's farm. And I looked out my window, I'm like, holy cow, there's erosion. We had a flooding event, it was like 3 years ago in the spring, and a lot of rain, a lot of thawing, and the ground was still frozen, so a lot of snow melt coming off, and I thought, yeah, there's a pretty vivid imagery of what 4 tons of topsoil loss looks like, which equates to 1.7 billion tons annually. Is that kind of alarming? Well, what that means is that we're losing a land mass. Like, yeah, some of that soil is washing off into the ocean, but basically, the equivalent of the country of England is becoming desertified every year through our modern agricultural practices. And there's the quote on the bottom of that. If anybody wants these slides, I'd be glad to send you the Google link to it. So my contact information is on there, on your quiz. Okay, so there's another question on there, and I'm gonna wander back here and get another quiz. Does everybody have a quiz? I think we got more back there. You gotta take this too, Jonathan.
Yeah, he's got it there, but the question is, does he have a pen?
Okay. Oh, we missed one, number 4. Number 4. So why did all that erosion happen a couple years ago, and in this last year in the Midwest with all the flooding? The ground was not resilient. The answer to number 4. Anybody want to take a wild stab at that? How many gallons of water can healthy soil? Can a 1% increase in soil organic matter retain on an annual basis?
How much land?
Number 2, very good. If we had a prize, we would give it to you. 20 to 25,000 gallons of water per acre for every 1% increase in soil organic matter. So that's why I say, if you're gonna do soil tests, that's where my eyes just kind of narrow in on a soil test, is soil organic matter, because I really see it's an indicator of things are functioning.
How much is that in the grand scheme of like an inch of rain on parts an acre?
Oh, somebody Google it. How much is 1 inch of rain per acre? It's millions of gallons. But if you multiply that, 1% increase, which the challenge is there's kind of a diminishing returns. At some point, when you drop below about 2% organic matter, your soil is really not functioning. And most farmland is 1% or less organic matter, meaning that there's no capacity. When we have a rainfall event, it's going to run off. It's going to take soil, it's going to take nutrients, it's going to take fertilizers with it.
Actually,
essentially what it is, I was just gonna say, you've got an acre foot, the way they measure water is of course by the acre foot, and that's 325,000 gallons. We'll cover 1 acre at 1 foot.
At 1 foot. Yes.
By 12.
Well, you divide by-
So that's what we do too, for 25,000 This property in Vermont was absorbing
Yeah.
up to, they got 7 inch rainfall, so.
Yeah.
It's about, so that 1% is about 30,000. Yeah.
All of it, so disaster
For his neighbors. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, yes.
That math's actually fairly revealing, because an inch of rain would be about 27,000 gallons.
It's about 1%.
And so on 1% matter, you could really capture a heck of a lot of rain with good soil.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for figuring that out. So, okay, so we're gonna crank through this. This was like slides from a 7-week long course that I took, and I picked out the best ones. And sorry if I get a little distracted here, but I'm gonna save some time for additional questions. So 5 principles of soil health. Which, on the question there, which is not a principle? Of soil health. Conservation tillage. Why? What? That's a practice, right? It could lead to one of the principles. So when we say, I think these are self-explanatory. I'm just going to say, why did we get to this degraded state? It's because we've disregarded one or multiple of these 5 principles in our effort to be efficient in our production.
Can you walk us through those 5 real quick?
Yeah, so disturbance comes in 2 main forms. That's chemical and that's mechanical. Chemical is with sides, herbicides, a general insecticide covers herbicides, fungicides, and all those. And a side, what does a side mean? It means it kills, so we're killing live. And as safe as they say it is, there's always unintended consequences when we spray. And then tillage, we all know what tillage is. It should be minimized. You know, I would say work to minimize it, whether that's through no-till practices, conservation tillage, living root in the soil as much of the year as possible. So what happens in a typical monoculture system? Monoculture means you're growing the same crop like in the Midwest. If you were to drive through the Midwest right now, what are you gonna see?
Corn and soybeans.
Well, this time of year.
Water.
Nothing.
Snow.
Right? Nothing. You're
Water,
gonna
snow.
see either snow or you're gonna see bare soil. Nature is not like that. So we keep armor on the soil. If you do annual cropping, try to implement no-till practices so that the stubble stays on there. You're planting cover crops in. As soon as one crop grows off, there's something else that's gonna grow. And that basically feeds the life of the soil. And then, next time I'll figure out how to get my things away from there. Animal integration, that's my favorite one because I'm a rancher. You have to integrate animals to be able to close the loop and help the system to function. And I would say in the more desert type environment that you live in, the more important it is to have animal integration. Like if you live in a tropical environment, things are more forgiving, things are more resilient. But in a desert, that's what God gave us. That's what our Creator created for us, is these animals to be able to cycle the nutrients through and be able to put them back out. And again, on the side, don't use insecticides on your animals if at all possible. I mean, wormers kill life. So we've avoided that because we don't want sterile poop. This is this wonderful gift that we get out of the back end of the cow and we're just sterilizing it. And the last one is increased diversity above ground and below ground. As above, so is below. If we have diverse species above, we're gonna have diverse species below. So those, basically, if we have healthy soil, our systems are going to be functioning. We're going to sequester carbon. We're going to increase our water holding capacity. Aggregation, that means that there's not compaction, there's air. Everybody all remember that? Air. And nutrient availability, and the opposite is true if we don't have it. Have you ever thought, like, where does a tree come from, this substance? You know, we have wood in here, we have a little bit of wood up there. This paper is made from trees. Where does it actually come from? It comes from this wonderful process called photosynthesis. How does it work? I don't begin to understand it, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's whereby plants are able to convert solar energy into carbon, and you have structure. And that's a basic building block for all life. When the sun quits shining, all bets are off, right? As long as we have sunshine, the system can be rejuvenated, can be regenerated. Carbon isn't the enemy, it's just carbon that has been misplaced. Where should the carbon be? In the soil, in the pedosphere. Remember that big word, pedosphere? Not in the atmosphere. Yeah, the biosphere can help, but really for long-term storage, that's where the solution is. So carbon-rich soil compared to dead soil, compared to dirt. Any guesses where soil comes from? It's kind of this, the textbook answer is through weathering over time, you're going to build soil. That's the geological process. There's another part of that, which is the biological process. Bio means life. And in a functioning soil where you have earthworms and microbes and plants that are growing and decomposing, you have animals that are cycling those nutrients, it's biology that creates soil, and it does it hundreds of times faster. Whereas geological time, it takes 500 years to build an inch of topsoil, biologically, you can do that in less than a decade. So exponentially quicker. And how do we do that? This is the cycle of life. Everything lives, everything dies so something can live. Is there any questions on that? This is by Elaine Ingham, the Soil Food Web. She's a soil scientist. But you just think about this, so let's go back to the Midwest. Any given time of year, how much diversity are you going to see above ground? Generally one species for lots of acres. So how much diversity are you going to see below ground? Not much. Yep. As is above, so is below. You guys have any questions so far? Kind of blowing through this pretty fast, but yes, please.
You made me think of this when you mentioned soil science and Elaine Ingram. Where do you send your soil samples? I'm guessing you do a more comprehensive soil sample than a standard soil sample.
Yes, and we're gonna walk through that real briefly here in a couple slides. Okay, so one of the questions is what living organism has the capacity to increase the root capacity by thousands of times? Everybody get this one? Can anybody say the word? Mycorrhizal fungi. This is like this infinitely complex network that is below the soil. And it has this wonderful trading system. Real quick, I like to think it's like kind of like Uber Eats. It's like the plant is us, and it says, hey, I want a little bit of, I'm really craving a grass-fed cheeseburger. And you call up Uber Eats, and it says, no problem, I'll be right there. You don't call them, you put it on your phone. And it comes back, and you pay. So the plant says, hey, I'm lacking a little bit of boron today. And it calls up the mycorrhizal fungi, and it says, no problem, I'm going to go get it. It goes and gets it, it brings it back to the plant root, and then the plant pays it through the sugar. The sugar's the carbon that it's harvesting above ground. So the microbes can't live above ground, but the plant has this counterpart, which is above ground, that harvests the solar energy. And that's how it pays for what the mycorrhizal gives to it. But we circumvent that when we spray our fields and we kill the mycorrhizae and we make our roots lazy, and we're gonna say, hey, I know better than you. At this stage in your life, you're going to need a little nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, so we're going to drip that on at the right times. Well, the root becomes lazy, the mycorrhizal fungi is no longer there, and we chase it away, and the system is broken.
Question.
Yes?
Is there a sort of a typical depth gauge of where those form, so that if you're doing some hand filling on your soil, that you can avoid going too deep into that area?
to not disturb the mycorrhizae. Okay, so the mycorrhizae, they're going to come back to the plant root. There are fungi species that are miles into the ground, right? But the mycorrhizae, I would say it's probably in that upper layer, your topsoil layer. So the minimal, I don't know if I could give an actual, I mean, it depends because everybody's soil is different. But if your roots, like a taproot on an alfalfa plant can go down 20 feet, if it's functioning properly, you're gonna have mycorrhizae down that far too, right? So to answer your question, I think what you're driving at is minimal disturbance is the best, because if it's oxygenated by turning it over, then it's gonna kill it. 26 civilizations have failed because of the collapse in agriculture. Are we gonna be different? Are we gonna be the exception? What road are we headed down? Right? If we continue down the path that we're on,
It's our choice.
yeah, and we truly do have the solution to climate change. So one thing I want to touch on is, oh, it skipped that for some reason. So, yeah, I'm sorry. So in 2000, in the late 90s, glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, that wonderful thing that we all, is safe water to drink, right? We're gonna serve it on our salads or something. In 1992, there was significantly less, and my slide, for some reason, it blocked it, maybe because I plagiarized it. No, actually, it's from Kiss the Ground, I think. It's open source. Okay, so now it has increased. The point is that there's a lot more spraying going on now than there was a decade ago. Two reasons because of that. One of them is we found out that Roundup can desiccate crops. It can actually kill your wheat crop so that you can harvest it all at the same time, which is wonderful. It's efficient, right? So a lot of people, they're not Roundup ready. They're not using GMOs, but they're still spraying Roundup to be able to go in and harvest their wheat crop. That was in the early 90s. Coincidentally, did anything else happen in the early 90s that maybe affected a large majority of our population right now?
Everything bad.
That has to do with specifically the microbiome in our bellies?
Oh, would that be gluten sensitivities?
Gluten sensitivity. Yeah. Is there any correlation there when wheat started to begin being sprayed with Roundup and when gluten sensitivity came on board? Probably just a coincidence, right? It's safe. Well, now look at this coincidence. This was the flooding of last year. And look at how it overlays with where the majority of Roundup is being sprayed.
Wow.
This slide right here is from Dr. Zach Bush. If you haven't watched any of Dr. Zach Bush, he's a cancer doctor, and he's like, born again. He's like, he's on the soil health movement, and he's going to tell people what in the heck is going on with their health. Zach Bush. So,
He's just got an interview in Acres magazine that's well worth reading, and on Acres USA's website they have a podcast called Tractor Time with a full interview.
but Zach Bush, yeah,
Zach talked all about that.
yeah, I would highly, highly recommend that you owe it to yourselves and to your grandchildren and to watch that. Zach, Z-A-C-H, Bush. Okay. Dead zones are increasing because what is happening to when all that flooding, all the nitrogen fertilizer, all the Roundup, all the herbicides, where does that all end up? In the ocean. And so now what do we get? We get a dead zone that's now the size of, what did we quote yesterday? New Jersey. Significantly large dead zone in the Gulf of New Mexico.
New Jersey.
I feel like that's kind of a big hickey on modern agriculture, right? It's like, you can't point this at oil spills. You can't point this at other things. This is agriculture. And our disregard for our fellow man. So it is time to take action. Again, this is from Dr. Zach Bush. This is America. This is the United States. We are #1 in many degenerative diseases. Can you be proud of that? Why is a first world nation leading in degenerative diseases? It comes back to we are disregarding natural systems. We're disregarding soil. It's affecting oceans. Now it's affecting our own system. Like we We are a system. We have a microbiome. We are more microbe than we are actual carbon.
What are the ratios trying to say there?
Okay, so autism, there's 1 in 36 children will be are diagnosed with autism currently. Now, per year. It was 1 in 80,000 about 15 years ago. A little alarming.
Answers 1 and 2?
Yeah, so look at your neighbor and just ask him, is it you or me? I don't know, sometimes in the rooms I'll ask everybody to stand up and I'll go through this list and I'll say sit down if this isn't affecting you or somebody in your immediate family. And interestingly enough, in every group I've done it, there's maybe been one, usually no people standing by the time I get to the bottom of this list. It's affecting all of us. So dementia, that's 100%. Why is that? So just think back to your grandparents. If I were teaching your grandparents and I were to ask that question or go through this, would there be any difference in the statistics with your grandparents versus now?
Yes.
Absolutely there would be. And what's the change? We've changed our farming system and now we are degrading the earth. Well, sometimes we go through life and we think, man, that's a lot of doom and gloom, guys. But I don't want to end on that note. First of all, before we do that, did we get all the questions answered? Everybody know what the major building block is in nature?
Hold your breath. Air.
No, the building
major
number
building
5.
block, carbon.
Carbon.
Number 5 is carbon, not Legos. That was a good guess. Okay, I think we got them all right. Are there any questions, clarifications? Sometimes we can, yeah, we'll take a couple. Ready?
So this was asked yesterday, and it's the same thing my brother and I are having struggles on our farms. We want to be organic, but weeds and tillage, and I feel, and same thing Bob was talking about, you feel like there is a place where they both can happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Everybody hear that? We want to be organic. We understand the soil health principles. We still have weeds. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next class, about the how-to. But the interesting thing is when we implement all 5 of those principles to the extent possible, we build resiliency in the soil, and weeds and pests are just indicators. They are nature's system to be able to come and fix the problem that we created. Remember the significant problems we face? Who created them? We did. I created my own problems. The weeds are there because of something that I did or my ancestors, but if they're there, I'm the one who can provide the solution. So this might not be a practical answer, but ask, why are they there? Why, what is wrong in my management that is causing this symptom? Because weeds aren't a problem. Insects aren't a problem, they're a symptom. The problem is in our management, and generally the problem starts right up here in our paradigm. Somewhere our thinking is off and it's not congruent. Good question. Can we give her a round of applause? I feel the pain of that, because I'm with you there. It's like sometimes you just want to go nuke them.
So you 15-minute timer.
Okay, thank you. And then in the back. Somebody back there?
So I don't want to take any time, but weeds can also be a opportunity where the soap purslane, for example, is one of those things that has more omega-3 fatty acids than most omega-3s in the grocery store you purchase, and I've seen them for sale in different grocery stores, and I used to crop scout and identify weeds and recommend spraying, and until I learned all the nutritional benefits of many weeds. So maybe you can turn your weeds into doubling your harvest and start selling them as well.
Where did you look that up?
There's a great book, 13 Wild Edible Weeds by Katrina Blair. And so that's a great one to look at, and that's the most 13 common weeds, especially in our region. And yeah, they can be actually very profitable for It's 13 Wild Edible Weeds. She also she's out of Durango, Colorado, and she has an organization called Turtle Lake Refuge, where she actually does serve foraged foods in a restaurant. And she's been able to, yeah, she's a great lady too.
Very good. Let's give another round of applause for a question about because again, weeds aren't the problem, and very often they are nutrient dense. We graze them with our livestock. Very high in minerals generally because some of them have large tap roots.
Cows love them.
So
One more question.
You're coming at this one very, obviously, big part of it is very spiritual standpoint. And I'm wondering how your message is received to other people who are very spiritual, and if you've ever considered teaming up with Captain Cahill and sort of addressing these subjects.
Good question. So I come across as very spiritual. I'll get her name. I don't know her, but it is. I would say that a lot of the things that we talk about in agriculture, they address the physical, they address the above ground. But as we've learned about, everything was created spiritually before it was created physically. Everything is made of energy. And as I've studied biodynamics and other things that we'll get into after lunch in the workshop, this more of the how-to, we'll talk about how we work on the physical, but we also, okay, that's probably a little too deep. The E equals MC squared. Energy and matter have to equal, right? There's the matter force that we work on, the physical, the tangible, but we also have to work on the spiritual and the energetic. So E equals MC squared. Think about that, how that applies to you, your living, and your operation. If all we're doing is focusing on the physical, we're gonna be working harder with frustration. Okay, I better jump in. If there are additional questions, I'll answer them after, and I'll finish up here. One day I was out with my wife. This was right after we got married, so we were just young pups in love. She grew up on a ranch. She likes to ride. She's a cowgirl. And we spent a lot of time in the saddle. We spent a lot of time moving cattle. And we had a BLM allotment where we would take our cattle from the summer range on a private ground about 30 miles out to the winter range on our BLM allotment. Well, one day, it was my wife Selena, Rafael from Mexico, and me, and 600 cows. They didn't have their calves, and we were headed out to the winter range. Well, we left the well where we let them water and where we overnighted them, and we headed out across this big sagebrush flat where there were no trees or landmarks. It's just imagine, this whole valley without houses or roads. And we were going to start here, and we were going to end up over there about lunchtime, cross the highway, and then they would be where they needed to be. Simple. The cows knew the way, right? It was simple. Well, what happened is soon after we got started, it started to snow. And visibility went from me to the back of the room, and it snowed. And it wasn't this light, fluffy snow, it was a heavy snow. And I remember looking over at my wife, and she had about 3 inches of snow on her hat. I mean, it was coming down that fast. Cows had snow on their backs. I was like, this is interesting. But hey, the cows know where to go. I'm just gonna trust the cattle. They know where to go. Well, then a little bit of a breeze picked up, not a big, it wasn't a blizzard, and it kept snowing. And pretty soon I realized that when the wind would come from this way, the cows would go this way. And when the wind would come from that way, the cows would go this way. I was like, I can't trust the cows anymore. Now what? Now what am I gonna do? No cell phone. I mean, there wasn't even cell phones then, no compass, no sense of direction. I mean, we were lost. Selena, Rafael, me, 600 cows, and our horses. And we were lost. And it was snowing, and snowing. Sometimes maybe we feel a little bit lost in our lives. Like, wow, there's all this information. What do I actually do with it? How do I make sense of it? Where's my guide? Where's my compass? Siri, where do I go? Well, we prayed. We tried to think, generally the wind comes from the west. Maybe the road is that way. And we just followed our inner compass. And that's the only thing we could really trust at that point was inside of us. in the direction that we felt we could feel, because our senses were completely off. Nothing made sense. Well, pretty soon we kept going, we kept going, we kept looking, we kept listening, we kept waiting. You know, the storm's gonna break. If all I can see is a mountaintop, I'll get my bearings and I'll point in that direction. It'll be okay, and it never did. And it was now getting late into the afternoon, and I remember just praying, going, I think it's this way. You think it's this way? You think it's that way? Oh man, where do we go? But finally, I remember hearing a sound, and we'd stop and listen, and we'd hear a sound. We couldn't see it. All we could hear was a sound, and it sounded like it was off to the east. So we'll go that way. I hope it's a truck on the road and not an airplane. And so we followed that sound, and we kept using those subtle indicators that we had until finally we could see the highway. And we were off course by about a mile, but we got to something that led us to where we needed to be. And I've been in life, sometimes I've felt spiritually lost, emotionally lost, physically lost. If you guys are feeling lost, is it okay if I share a little bit about a program that I created to continue the learning experiences we've had right here from your own home? Is that okay?
Yes.
So, on the back of the pamphlet, there is a little photo there, and it talks about an online class and online training that we're going to do, where we're going to dive deeper into these regenerative principles. And it's interesting because this was kind of given to me. So I'm gonna learn with you, because I told my wife, what's it gonna be about? And I said, well, let's make week one about, let's discover what our personal why is. You know, what's my purpose in life? Maybe it's agriculture, maybe it's something else. And then week two, I wonder what we should do there. Oh, well, a lot of us are walking around sick, and we're really tired. We don't have the energy to fulfill our missions. And our families are sick, and sometimes that's dragging us down. So why don't we learn some principles about health? So that's what week two is going to be about. Week three, we're going to dive into what we've talked about here and get maybe a little bit more nerdy about the soil health side of it. And then week four is where I think it's really fun, and don't be scared away, because the teacher learns the most, and I'm selfish, that's why I'm up here. And I realize that I don't know if oceans or pedospheres sequester more carbon. I learned that today, that I don't know that answer, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure it out before the next class so that I can answer that question. And I'm giving you the opportunity to be able to do the same. Prepare either to write a blog post or to do a Facebook Live. Ideally, you're in front of somebody who's going to give you a little bit of pushback to find out where your holes are in your education. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Are there any questions about this course? It's a Zoom platform. It's super easy to get on. All you have to have is an internet access, a computer, or a smartphone. It's going to be 4 consecutive weeks, starting a week from this coming Tuesday. So every Tuesday, it'll be taught at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. You don't even have to get fully dressed, hopefully. I mean, it'll be a video, so be appropriate, but I might be in my pajamas, and that's going to be okay, because I'm going to get home. I want you to be comfortable. We have a question.
PM? AM?
Oh, sorry, PM.
PM.
Tuesday evenings, starting in 2 weeks. Any other questions, clarifications?
So what's the Zoom?
It's a webinar platform. It's super easy to jump on. It'll walk you through a link, and we use it almost every day in our
So
business.
you've got to be live streaming though.
Yeah, you have to have internet access.
So it will be recorded. If you miss a class, it will be recorded. And it's going to be a great opportunity to be able to join in with fellow regenitarians, people who want to regenerate the earth and move forward a movement.
You can also do it on a phone.
So this,
if you have a cell phone.
this code at the bottom will tap you into the class. If you can't access that with your smartphone, I can sign you up. But the conference special, what's the price say? It's kind of hard to read. $147. And as a special gift, because I like to move people and help them to take action. For the first 6 people from this class who sign up, they'll also get a copy of Kiss the Ground. So, if you feel moved to do it, It's a great opportunity to be able to jump on, continuing your learning at home. Any questions? You guys have been awesome. I've had fun. Turn to your neighbor and say, you can regenerate the earth. Give yourself a big round of applause.
This is Eric. She's the daughter of the guy that